Azure Firewall that protects against, how to filter against the protocols, ports, IPs, as well as inspections on these network level packets, L3 to L7. But we saw the difference from the web application attacks that actually play on the fields, actually play on the URIs, and that's what the web application firewall does. So we saw the protocol attacks, WAF attacks, and now we are looking at volumetric attacks. So the goal of Azure DDoS protection protects from these volumetric attacks. So how do we define a volumetric attack? So what is a DDoS? DDoS is a distributed DOS attack. So if I look at the firewall, if I see a lot of offending traffic coming from an IP, I can block it. If I see traffic going out from a IP or URL, I can block it. But what happens when a lot of devices send traffic, which is not legitimate? How do we take care of that, right? And DDoS does exactly that. If you look at the picture on the right side, all these red devices all these red icons are the devices. They could be bots. They are devices that are sending unwanted traffic to that server sitting below. Now, server has. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, so the servers have limited resources of CPU, memory. The goal of a volumetric attack is to consume those resources, make the server use up all the resources such that your application is no longer available or it sees severe latency. So your end users, your clients cannot access it, cannot use it. That's the goal of a DDoS, to make your service inaccessible or to severely degrade your service. And it affects the business, right? And that's why DDoS attacks are very difficult to manage. If you see here, the number of requests that came in, if you look at the solutions we talked about, they are not going to scale. How do I, because these are changing IPs, right? These devices, this can also be spoof devices. So like attack a vulnerable device and now make that device send offending traffic to another server. So the IPs keep changing. There are too many. That's what a DDoS is. And pretty much a DDoS by itself will bring down a service, right? And that's the biggest concern. We are seeing a lot more DDoS attacks now than we were. It's very, very easy to hire someone to do these DDoS attacks. And different than other attacks, the DDoS attack is really about making a service inaccessible more than anything. It is not a very long attack. It is short-term attack and making sure your service goes down that many times, how many ever times they do the DDoS, right? So it is a huge business impact. And that's why it is a concern. And as you see here, this is the DDoS attacks are growing. The attack bandwidth is growing. The number of attacks are growing. So really, nobody can say there won't be DDoS anymore. And that's the challenge. And if you see on the bottom right, these are the attack vectors, right? A DDoS attack typically occurs on TCP, UDP ports, and then there are these amplification attacks. The largest documented attack is actually an attack that Azure successfully mitigated. That's 3.47 terabits per second, right? Huge attack. I think we had a similar attack in 2022 that Microsoft successfully mitigated, but you just get the idea of the size of these attacks. And then the challenge becomes how to mitigate these, right? And that's what we are trying to address. So Azure has Azure DDoS Network Protection. It is, and Azure has a global network. This protection works on your public IPs. So far the solutions that we looked at, Azure Firewall, for instance, it has a public IP. You cannot do without it. Azure Web Application Firewall integrates with Application Gateway. It has a public IP. So how do we protect these IPs? While they provide protection, their resources can be consumed, right? You can scale, and the scale has cost, but talk about 3.47 terabits. Um, you need to protect these public IPs. So that's where Azure DDoS comes in. It applies, it has different SKUs, but it protects these public IPs in your network and make sure they are protected. The way it does it, it has a adaptive tuning methodology, meaning it will monitor this public IP and public IPs that you're protecting, and know the type of traffic, the level of volume that you're seeing, and then apply thresholds or build policies accordingly in the backend. And it is a managed service, so it takes care of the tuning on its own. And then whenever that threshold is crossed, it knows to activate DDoS protection and start mitigating the traffic. Um, there is so if whenever you are under attack, we have metrics and logs. We saw a lot of those with the firewall and WAF, but we have similar very useful metrics for DDoS that helps the customer see and know if they are under DDoS attacks, and look at the flow logs of what kind of attacks they're getting, and so on. So the visibility into those logs. And then we have access to the DDoS. There is a DDoS rapid response. So when you see that you are under attack or possibly a DDoS attack, that's when you can open a support ticket and get with SEV-A and get someone to talk to someone about this DDoS attack and the mitigation policies. So we actually have two SKUs of DDoS protection. And then there is by default DDoS infrastructure protection that is always on, right? So there is a DDoS infrastructure protection. The goal is to keep Azure up and running, is to protect Azure environments, Azure regions from these kind of large attacks, protected from these kind of large attacks. There's also the PaaS services. Remember, the PaaS services are managed services. They need to be accessible with public IPs. Then Azure infrastructure protection protects those services. So there is no cost for infrastructure protection to you. It is available to all. But the important thing to remember, the scale is very high. The threshold is very high. Your application is not seeing that kind of large threshold. Large amounts of traffic. So when you want to protect your particular application, for example, it makes sense to have a plan for your environment. And that's where we have two different plans. We've had the DDoS network protection plan for some time, and all the features that I talked about right now with DDoS rapid response, SLA guarantee and cost protection are included with this. So with SLA guarantee and cost protection, essentially what we are saying is if there is an active attack, active documented DDoS attack, then you get, for all the scale that you had to do of the VMs of the services, you get a cost protection for that. So that's the benefit with DDoS network protection. And of course, there is the adaptive tuning. That's how it manages and protects the environment from the DDoS level attacks. Now, when you do DDoS network protection, it protects it is enabled and attached at a VNet level, and then you can have you create a DDoS plan and have multiple VNets attached to it, so it will protect all those VNets, meaning all the public IPs on those VNets, and you don't have to do anything. Everything is covered, but if you don't have a very large environment and there is also a cost associated with DDoS network protection. But for SMBs or for smaller environments, you have a couple IPs, a few IPs that you want to protect. then there is a new SKU that is DDoS IP protection, which is in preview right now, but that gives you the ability to enable DDoS protection at an IP level. And IP is public IP, right? We are talking about public IP protection. Let's say in this example, I have two public IPs. I enable that DDoS at an IP level versus my whole VNet level, right? So that's where the DDoS IP protection comes in. It still has, so it is cost effective. The pricing is per IP versus per plan. And you choose which IP you want to protect. It is easy to configure. It has the same adaptive tuning, etc. features. And then the benefits of being cloud native. But a little bit more comparison of what is and is not in IP protection. As you see here, the attack mitigation, the automatic responses, metrics, etc. is available. But if you look at the DDoS rapid response, the cost protection when a DDoS attack happens, like your resources will scale. And the traffic, for example, in amplification attacks, a lot of traffic goes out. So all that protection you get with network protection because it is priced accordingly. With IP protection, that part is not there. So the other part to remember is DDoS protection works at layer 4, like it is for your TCP, UDP traffic and TCP SYN traffic, for example. But when we are talking about WAF, web application traffic, if you have an application gateway and WAF attached to it, that WAF cost is discounted with the network protection. So there are benefits with the network protection plan. As you see here, the Microsoft's protection scale is huge. This is the global network we are talking about. So 80 terabits per second mitigation capacity, right? That's what Microsoft has. And on an average, it does 2,000 attack mitigations daily. So that's the type of traffic it looks at. That's what the DDoS infrastructure protection protects your services from. And we saw, and we will see in a demo, how to see your DDoS integrations with Firewall Manager, but that's where the Firewall Manager gives you that single pane of glass, that ease of management and update in one place. So now, DDoS network protection does the L3, L4 level attacks protection like we talked about. But what we are seeing more and more is more DDoS attacks in the gaming industry. In the very, very short attacks, right? 2 to 10 seconds, but you want to disrupt that game. So very different kind of attacks. And how do you leverage the existing solution works a little bit differently, right? It works on threshold. This is very, very short attacks. So in addition to DDoS, we have a way of integrating a third-party NVA solution using our gateway load balancer, such that that NVA solution also protects against these kind of specific scenarios that DDoS protection by itself would not fully cover. So we do have this documented. If you're working with a provider, this can be done with our new gateway load balancer SKU. I just wanted to, this is in public preview, not ready for GA, but I just wanted to let you know. So if you do have use cases where you need to use this, go ahead and check it out, and something you can use with customer environments. I have more slides that goes into details. So I may skip because I'm also doing a demo, which will cover a lot of it. But when we say adaptive tuning, we have public IPs we know we are protecting. And then what DDoS network protection does is monitors the traffic, right? It tunes the DDoS to this traffic and knows exactly what kind of traffic that Azure Firewall IP sees, how much throughput it sees on a daily basis, and then creates policies accordingly. Our services use machine learning, and DDoS definitely uses machine learning algorithms for this adaptive tunings. It has these policies finely tuned to your specific public IPs. I'm going to do a demo on analytics and metrics, so we will talk more about it at that point. We have Microsoft Defender for Cloud. I think yesterday we covered this in depth, but there are compliance requirements to have DDoS network protection. There is, again, the visibility that you need to know that, hey, my new VNet is not protected by DDoS, right? And because it's a compliance requirements, I would like to know if that happened. And then those alerts can be configured. And then Defender is where you can see the recommendations for the new public IPs that you put in and see those alerts in one place along with the rest of the environments. So then you can have these in multiple places, but there is integration with Microsoft Defender for Cloud. And of course, we have Microsoft Sentinel. We saw the integration with Microsoft Sentinel. DDoS also has a dashboard you can see through Microsoft Sentinel. There is a template you can deploy, you can edit, but as you see here, again, at a high level, you know the amount, the volume of traffic you are seeing, you know the IPs that are being protected, and you can drill down into the type of breakdown into the traffic that you're seeing, from where it is coming. So for example, I'm seeing a lot of traffic from Canada. Maybe my customers are in Canada and it is legitimate, maybe it is not. So I get to see and decide on this information. And this is where the workbooks are for insights. It's like your dashboard. It is your dashboard. It is interactive, meaning if you see something, you can edit, update, I want more information, things like that. But that's where it is very helpful to get those insights versus having to sift through the logs. We talked about DDoS rapid response. So if you have DDoS network protection enabled and you suspect you are seeing a DDoS attack, right? And just because it's increased traffic doesn't mean it's a DDoS, but that's where we want to start looking into it. And if you need help, you can open a SEV-A ticket and engage our DDoS rapid response. You need to do this in the service, in your services. You have to write DDoS protection. You have to say the plan that you have. This is the DDoS plan. The first thing you do is create a DDoS plan. So mention the plan here, and then you can open a critical ticket and give the description as under attack. And someone will be with you on the call within 15 minutes. So there is an SLA guarantee that we talked about. It is 99.99% for Azure DDoS protection. And if there is an attack like we talked about, there is 100% service credits for this. So DDoS network protection is priced at, as you see here, it is per month plan, per month per plan. So DDoS plan works for the entire tenant, right? So 3,000 per month. For 100 IPs are covered. If it is more than 100 IPs, it is $30 per month. But there are many benefits in addition to the cost protection. The rapid response support is available without you having that premium support plan. So that is $75K per year. So, and then WAF is discounted. So these are the benefits that are built into it. Of course, it still depends on the size of the environment. So if you have just a handful of IPs, it does not make sense to have a network protection. You can use DDoS IP protection, and then the charge is $199 per month. It is in preview right now, so that's something to keep in mind, but then the price is this. So before we go to the demo, I want to stitch everything together, and this is the important thing, right? How are these technologies working together to provide the protection we need? So we talked about VNets, the VMs deployed, and how network security groups can protect the communication here, provide that fine granular level of control. So at a VNet level, NSGs work between VNets That's where we want the firewalls. So these are peered to the hub VNet. And from here, these workloads, all the traffic to wherever goes through the firewall. So that provides additional segmentation and threat protection. Combine that with application gateway. These VMs can be fronted with an application, web application firewall. And this, in addition to Azure Firewall, gives you that protection with web application traffic and the rest of the traffic that you are seeing. Front door, of course, works at a global level. You can have application gateway fronted with front door to have the additional benefit, but in general, at front door, there is a WAF. And then, of course, DDoS protection at a VNet level. This can protect all the VNets. Remember, the first thing we want to have as less IP addresses as possible. Then there are services that do need IP addresses, and that's where you can protect with Azure DDoS protection. We talked about how to control access to the PaaS services, remove internet access, and only allow access privately using private endpoints and private link service. And see here, I have a private endpoint here. If I have this peering, all of these peered VNets can also access it. So I just have to create one in the hub VNet or one in the peered VNet and then have this connectivity through the firewall, and these can be accessed. So a lot more simplicity as well. You can protect your on-premise communication too with WAF as well as firewall. So this is how we are putting everything together. I just wanted to put this diagram so you have a visual to get it to put it together. Okay. I just went through these key takeaways, but really it is about layered defense, right? Defense in depth. And that's exactly what is necessary at every level. It's not written here, but visibility is number one, tops everything, above everything, right? So just keep that in mind. Here are some resources, as I just mentioned before. There are links to all of these products, and then under it, there are concepts, and you can drill into each of these concepts and get more information on each of these. So with this, let me jump into the demo for DDoS, and I will leave some time for questions. So we have a test environment where we can send test traffic. So I'm going to send it here. I have a public IP. This is an application gateway public IP, and I want to send TCP SYN flood, and I'm sending set size of packets, and let's run it for 10 minutes. While we are doing that, let's see how to enable DDoS protection. So here, let's go back to the firewall manager. Remember all protections from one place, and you can see DDoS protection plans. So click on that, and here I can create a plan to be able to protect my environment. If I'm doing network protection, I have to create a DDoS protection plan. So, sorry, this is the wrong subscription. So I will just take an example, and you give a resource group. You give a resource group, you give a name, you give a region, and that's all you need. And you click review plus create. So I'm going to go out of this environment, this configuration, because I already have a DDoS plan created. Let's take a look at it. And I see here the details of the plan, which subscription it lies in. So this plan can protect all your resources. The billing goes to this subscription. And that's where it's important with subscription. You tie the plan to. And then when I go to protected resources, this will show me, because it's a network plan, I'm attaching it to VNets. And you see I have a VNet that is protected by this plan. And then on the top, if I go, it'll show me, go right, it'll show me the IPs that are being protected. So there is this firewall IP, that is this gateway IP, and this is the IP that is under attack right now. And if I have a bastion host, a load balancer, these are the resources that it will cover, basically. And you can create alerts, for example, when I'm under DDoS attack, send me an alert. When that attack subsides, send me an alert. You can configure those alerts. Let me see if I can look at some metrics. What metrics we are not able to retrieve this. Let's see if I can do a new chart. Maybe I need to refresh it. So I'm using a demo environment. Sometimes we have, sorry. So I have to select the right subscription here. Resource types. Okay, let's select all. I'm going to select CyberSock. I had an application IP here. I believe it is this one. Okay, I am not going to go into it. I have some trouble because it is a demo environment. I'm not able to change the scope here for whatever reason. Select a resource type. Application gateway. Let's see if this helps me. And that's not what I was looking for. So I'm going to skip it in the interest of time. But here I am at the VNet level. Remember, my plan is attached to the VNet. So how do you do this? You go to the virtual network, go to the DDoS protection. And so under virtual networks, under settings, you configure like the address space, your subnets, bastion host, etc. You go to DDoS protection, and this is where you enable network protection, and then you select a plan. So it was the right plan, but it was not pulling the metrics for whatever reason. So here, this is my IP, basically. And then here is where I will see a few things, actually. Here is where I will go into diagnostic settings, and I will see, because this is a public IP, it is protected by these um, DDoS protect notifications, mitigation decisions, and mitigation DDoS flows, right? So how does it look like? Let me see if I can edit this setting and show you. So when it sends information, these are the logs it is sending. DDoS protection notifications is where it tells you very simply whether you are under attack or not, right? So there will be, if it sees you're under attack, it will send a notification, you're under attack. And then also when the attack goes away. Then it sends you flow logs. This is all packets, information on all packets that flows. So it is a lot of information. It is in real time, you will see all the information. So when you're under attack, you want to go there and see this information. And then it sends reports on DDoS mitigations every 5 minutes while it is going on. And when the attack ends, it will send a post-attack report, right? So you can send these logs the way you do for all other things. Here we are sending it to Log Analytics workspace. Let me see if I have metrics here. So here I should be able to see. Let's see. Here I have metric under DDoS attack or not. So I'm running this over last 24 hours, but if you see here right now, it triggered, right? So this graph says 0 or 1, not under attack or under attack. As you see here, I started that attack and it instantly triggered, hey, your environment is under attack, and it is specific to this IP. So that's where we look for. So this is under attack. And now I need to have my DDoS team act on it, right? So as a customer, they start looking at the rest of the information when you see this metric. I also wanted to show one other thing. So for example, SYN packets. under DDoS attacks. If I look at this graph, I'm seeing 10K per second. This is my threshold. So for inbound SYN packets, I am typically expecting no more than 10,000 packets per second, right? And this is the threshold that the DDoS will work on, meaning if the traffic went above this, that's when it triggers the DDoS attack. And similarly, I will have threshold for TCP traffic and UDP traffic, and then you know what it is like. So if the customer is going to have some large event, some viral event, and they are expecting a lot of traffic, then please use that support, SEV-A support, and let the team know that, hey, you're going to expect more than 10K per second, for example. So that way, they know that they need to adjust the threshold and watch for traffic accordingly. So that's where these metrics are very, very useful. Now I want to look at the logs. And if you see here, I have some logs on, we saw 3 categories of logs, right? So I have some logs filtered on DDoS protection notifications. So I'm going to just click on one of these. What I see here is first the time it was generated. It is of category protection notifications, meaning it's telling me I'm under attack or not, right? So it'll tell you that this traffic mitigation was stopped at this time for this IP. So now you know there was an attack in progress and it was stopped. So if I look at the log below that, it is saying, okay, this one is also attack stopped, but I should be able to see attack started, right? So now I want to look at the time when the attack was started. That was 10:47 on this date. And this is when you would have seen the first time. And if you have alerts, you will have received the alerts and you start taking action. Let's see if we can see more logs. So here I have DDoS mitigation reports. Reports gives you, if I just close this, if you see here, these reports are generated about every 5 minutes. And then there will be a report for post-attack summary. But it gives you more details on what your traffic looks like. For example, mitigation started at this time, and this log is for this time. So this is 5-minute interval, and DDoS happening against this IP. The attack vectors are TCP flood in this case. The traffic information like total packets, then you can open this. The total packets that you are seeing are 300, but 240 are being dropped by the scrubbing that DDoS solution does in the back end. So that's the volume of traffic you're seeing, but there are not all packets are dropped. So if you see here, total packets dropped were 240, but the rest of the 60 were legitimate and they were passed, right? So as you see here, while there was DDoS attack going on, your legitimate traffic is still being addressed, like it's still able to flow. So your application is up and running. And then you can look into the drop reason, and it will say this is a TCP attack, so protocol violation for TCP. And then that's the information every 5 minutes that you get while the attack is in progress. And then finally, flow logs. Flow logs happen every 5 minutes. Flow logs is capturing all the packets. So it's not 5 minutes, it is near real time. So this is the last attack that I had run at 10:47 UTC time. But you see here, this information is pretty much very frequent. If I just open this, it gives me more information on these flow logs. Resource type public IP, and this is a mitigation flow log. And what is the source IP? This is the source IP. This is the source port and destination. So traffic coming from this IP. Remember, in DDoS, it is multiple IPs, but it gives you the information where the traffic is going and what port the traffic is coming from. So if you didn't want traffic to come on port 80, first thing is fix that, allow only 443, right? So there are many things you can do in your environment, but these logs help you tune the configuration to minimize the attack and help keep those servers and applications up and running. So that's all I had. I think this is still going on, but when that finishes, we saw in the metrics that the logs will show that the attack ended.